The gravy hadn't even been passed around the Thanksgiving table when the interrogation began. So Emily, my mother-in-law, Margaret Whitman, adjusted her designer glasses, still teaching at that public school. I nodded, carefully spreading my napkin across my lap. Yes, still teaching AP Computer Science at Roosevelt High. Such a waste, she sighed dramatically, exchanging knowing looks with my father-in-law. All that education, and you're making what, $45,000 a year? My husband Tom squeezed my hand under the table. We'd been married 3 years, and his parents still couldn't understand why I chose to teach instead of joining a tech company like their precious son. And that car of yours, Margaret continued, warming to her favorite topic. A 5-year-old Civic? Tom makes 6 figures at Davidson Tech. Surely you could afford something more appropriate for the family image. I thought about the gleaming Tesla parked in my private garage in Silicon Valley, the one I used when meeting with investors. But here in suburban Chicago, my Honda Civic served its purpose perfectly. I like my car, I said simply, accepting the mashed potatoes from Tom's sister Jennifer. It's reliable. Well, at least one of you has a real career. Margaret smiled proudly at Tom. Davidson Tech just landed that huge contract with Global Education Solutions. Didn't they, dear? $20 million for their new learning platform? Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He knew exactly why Davidson Tech had landed that contract, but like me, he was sworn to secrecy. Actually, he began, but I gave his hand another squeeze. Not yet. The truth was, I did have another job besides teaching. A rather significant one. 7 years ago, I'd founded Learn Tech Solutions, now the largest educational technology company in North America. Our learning platforms serve over 10 million students worldwide, generating annual revenues exceeding $500 million. But almost no one knew I was the CEO. I operated through a carefully constructed system of proxies and virtual offices, appearing in public only when absolutely necessary and using my married name, Emily Whitman, exclusively for my teaching career. To the tech world, I was E.G. Chen, the reclusive founder of Learn Tech, known for brilliant innovation and obsessive privacy. There were reasons for my secrecy. Good ones. I'd watched too many education startups lose their soul after going public, seeing too many founders become more focused on stock prices than student outcomes. By maintaining my teaching career and my anonymity, I kept one foot firmly in the real world of education. Every day in my classroom reminded me why I'd started Learn Tech in the first place. Speaking of education technology, Jennifer chimed in. My friend works at Learn Tech Solutions. Says they're revolutionizing a whole industry. Did you ever think about applying there, Emily? They probably pay teachers better than public schools. I hid my smile behind a sip of water, as she only knew that her friend was probably one of my 3,000 employees. I've looked into them, I replied neutrally. They do good work. Good work? Margaret scoffed. They're worth billions. That's what you should be aiming for, not wasting your time with high school students. Tom's fork clattered against his plate. Mom. It's okay, I said softly. The moment would come soon enough. The rest of dinner passed in a familiar pattern of subtle digs and not-so-subtle suggestions about my career choices. Margaret detailed her country club friends' children's successes, the investment bankers, the startup founders, the corporate lawyers. None of them settling for teaching. Later, as we helped clear the dishes, Tom whispered, You know Davidson Tech's CEO is visiting your school on Monday, right? For that coding initiative? I nodded, stacking plates in the dishwasher. Should be interesting. Mom and Dad insisted on coming too. They want to show off their connection to the project. They have no idea they'll be walking into your classroom. Life has a funny way of revealing truths, I said, thinking of the contract that had brought all this about. 2 months ago, Davidson Tech had bid on a major contract with Global Education Solutions, a $20 million deal to provide learning software to school districts nationwide. What they didn't know was that Global Education Solutions was a subsidiary of Learn Tech. We created it specifically to partner with promising tech companies, helping them develop better educational products. I've been watching Davidson Tech for months. Their technology was innovative, but they needed guidance on the educational side. The kind of insight that could only come from real classroom experience. The kind of insight I had. The contract had a specific requirement: all software had to be tested in real classrooms, with the lead developer personally observing its use. Davidson Tech's CEO, Michael Davidson, had chosen Roosevelt High for the pilot program, unaware that he'd be walking into the classroom of the very person who controlled his company's future. "Emily," Margaret's voice cut through my thoughts. "Are you going to help with dessert, or are you too busy daydreaming about grading papers?" I smiled, thinking about the stack of contracts on my other desk, my CEO desk, waiting for my signature. "Coming, Margaret." The weekend passed quickly. I spent Saturday morning in my home office, connected to LearnTech's secure servers, reviewing quarterly projections and approving new development initiatives. In the afternoon, I graded AP Computer Science projects, finding inspiration in my students' creative solutions to coding challenges. Sunday evening, my secure phone buzzed with a message from my executive assistant. Davidson Tech team confirmed for 9 a.m. classroom observation. Global Ed contract ready for final approval. I sent back a quick acknowledgement, then turned to help Tom with dinner. He was still amused by the whole situation. "I can't believe they've never Googled you," he said, chopping vegetables. "One search for EJ Chen LearnTech would show your MIT graduation photo." "People see what they expect to see," I replied. "Besides, I had those search results carefully curated years ago. Try finding that photo now." The truth was, I'd gone to extraordinary lengths to keep my dual identities separate. The only people who knew were Tom, my board of directors, and a small circle of trusted executives. Even my assistant thought E.G. Chen taught as a hobby, not the other way around. Monday morning, I arrived at Roosevelt High earlier than usual, setting up my classroom for first period AP Computer Science. My students were excited about the visitors. It wasn't every day that tech executives observed their class. At 8:55, I heard familiar voices in the hallway. "I still don't see why we have to waste time in some public school classroom," Margaret was saying. "Surely Michael has more important things to do." "It's part of the contract requirements," Michael Davidson's voice replied. "We need to observe the software in a real educational environment." I adjusted my simple blazer, checked that my classroom's video conference system was ready, and opened the door to greet my visitors. "Welcome to Roosevelt High," I said pleasantly. "I'm Mrs. Whitman, the AP Computer Science teacher." The look on Margaret's face was priceless. Margaret recovered quickly, years of social training kicking in. "Emily, dear, we didn't know this was your classroom." Michael Davidson stepped forward, extending his hand. "Mrs. Whitman, thank you for having us. I'm Michael Davidson, CEO of Davidson Tech." Of course, I smiled, shaking his hand. "We're excited to test your learning platform. My students are particularly interested in the adaptive AI components." He blinked, clearly not expecting such technical knowledge from a high school teacher. Before he could respond, students began filing in, their curious glances darting between our visitors and the unusually large display screen I'd set up. "Please take a seat anywhere." I gestured to the chairs we'd arranged at the back of the classroom. "We'll begin in 5 minutes." As the classroom filled, I noticed Margaret whispering urgently to Tom, probably demanding to know why he hadn't warned her. Tom just shrugged, his eyes twinkling with suppressed amusement. At exactly 9 a.m., I began my lesson. Today we'll be testing new educational software developed by Davidson Tech. We'll also be joined virtually by some other interested parties. I clicked a button, and the large display came to life. The familiar faces of LearnTech's board of directors appeared, along with several executives from Global Education Solutions. Margaret's eyes widened as she recognized some of the most powerful figures in educational technology. What she didn't realize was that they weren't here to watch Davidson Tech. They were here to watch me. "Good morning, everyone," I said to the screen. "Thank you for joining us. Shall we begin?" "Of course, Ms. Chen," replied James Morton, LearnTech's board chairman. "We're eager to see the software in action." I heard Margaret's sharp intake of breath. Next to her, Michael Davidson had gone very still, his eyes darting between me and the screen. For the next hour, I led my students through a sophisticated coding exercise using Davidson Tech's platform. I asked pointed questions, highlighted potential improvements, and demonstrated exactly how the software could be enhanced for better educational outcomes. My students, as always, were brilliant. They found bugs we hadn't caught in testing, suggested interface improvements, and demonstrated why real classroom feedback was invaluable for educational technology. Throughout the lesson, I could feel the mounting tension from the visitors' corner. Margaret's face had progressed through confusion to disbelief to something approaching horror as the reality of the situation slowly dawned on her. As the students filed out for their next class, Michael Davidson approached me, his expression a mix of respect and apprehension. "You're E.J. Chen." It wasn't a question. "I am," I confirmed, switching off the display screen. "And I have to say, your platform shows real promise. With some refinements based on today's observations, I think we can move forward with the contract." The contract. He seemed to be putting pieces together. Global Education Solutions is a subsidiary of LearnTech, I finished. "We've been watching your company's work for some time. Your technical innovation combined with our educational expertise could really benefit students worldwide." All this time, Margaret's voice cut through the conversation. She'd risen from her chair, designer handbag clutched like a shield. "You've been running a billion-dollar company while pretending to be just a teacher." I turned to face my mother-in-law. "I wasn't pretending anything. I am a teacher. I'm also LearnTech's CEO. The two roles inform each other." But the car, the modest lifestyle. "Why would you?" "Because it's not about the money," I said quietly. "It's about making a difference in education. Every day in this classroom teaches me something new about what students and teachers really need. That knowledge drives every decision LearnTech makes." James Morton's voice came from my laptop where the video conference was still connected. "It's why we're the industry leader. While other companies guess what educators need, we know, because our CEO never lost touch with the classroom." The next few hours were a blur of paperwork and presentations. The Davidson Tech contract was finalized, with specific provisions for continued classroom testing and teacher input. Michael Davidson, to his credit, quickly grasped the value of our unusual arrangement and became an enthusiastic partner. Margaret and my father-in-law left without saying goodbye. Tom told me later that they went straight to the country club, probably trying to process how they'd spent 3 years looking down on their daughter-in-law without realizing she was one of the most successful tech entrepreneurs in the country. That evening, as Tom and I had dinner in our modest suburban home, my secure phone buzzed with a message. The Davidson Tech story had leaked to the press. My careful anonymity was about to end. "Are you ready for this?" Tom asked, watching me read the message. I thought about my students, about the real impact we could make now that Davidson Tech was on board. "You know what? I think I am." The story broke the next morning. Secret billionaire teaching high school. The double life of tech CEO E.J. Chen read the headlines. My phone didn't stop ringing. I went to work anyway. "Is it true, Mrs. Whitman?" my students asked as they arrived for first period. "Are you really the CEO of LearnTech?" "Yes," I said simply. "Now let's talk about today's coding challenge." They grinned and opened their laptops. These kids, they got it. They understood that titles and bank accounts weren't what mattered. What mattered was the work, the learning, the constant push to make things better. A week later, Margaret called. "I don't understand," she said, skipping any greeting. "You could have shut me up at any time. You could have shown up in a luxury car, bought a mansion, lived like someone who cares about appearances," I suggested. She was quiet for a moment. "I've been horrible to you." "You've been who you are," I replied, "just as I've been who I am." "And who is that, exactly?" I looked around my classroom, at the projects pinned to the walls, the eager faces of students arriving early to work on their coding. I'm a teacher who happened to build a tech company, or maybe I'm a CEO who never stopped teaching. Does it matter? After that, things changed. Not all at once, but gradually. Margaret stopped making comments about my car, my clothes, my career choices. Instead, she started asking questions about education, about technology, about making a difference. The press eventually moved on to other stories. My students adjusted to having a CEO as their teacher, though they did convince me to let them beta test all new LearnTech products. Davidson Tech's learning platform, refined by real classroom feedback, became an industry standard. Last month, I was asked to give a commencement speech at MIT, my alma mater. As I stood at the podium, looking out at the sea of graduates, I thought about all the paths not taken, all the conventional choices I'd ignored. Success isn't about titles or bank accounts, I told them. It's about impact. Find work that matters. Stay connected to the real world. And never ever let anyone define your worth by your salary or your car. In the audience, I spotted Margaret sitting between Tom and Jennifer. She was actually taking notes. These days, when people ask why I still teach, I tell them the truth. Every morning in my classroom reminds me why I built LearnTech in the first place. Every student question sparks new innovations. Every coding challenge reveals new opportunities. Yes, I could have lived differently, could have flaunted my success, put Margaret and her country club friends in their place years ago. But that would have meant losing touch with what really matters. Besides, there's something deeply satisfying about being underestimated, about quietly changing the world while others focus on appearances, about proving that success doesn't always look the way people expect it to. Last week, one of my students asked me if it was hard balancing teaching with running a billion-dollar company. Not as hard as pretending to be less than you are to please others, I told her. Once you know who you are and what matters to you, the rest is just details. And as I watched her work through a complex coding problem, I smiled, thinking about all the lives we touch, all the potential we unlock, when we stop worrying about how things look and focus on how they work. After all, the best success stories aren't always the ones everyone can see. Sometimes they're written in quiet classrooms, one student at a time, while the world focuses on flashier things. And that's exactly how it should be.